All right, good evening, Gamal. I appreciate you taking this time this evening to do this interview. You have a great story from what we talked about previously. So if you could please share us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first off, thanks for having me. My name is Gamal Williams. I am a retired Navy senior chief, and I am a newly published author living in the Chesapeake, Virginia area.
And then
And oh,
so,
I'm a dad. I'm a dad too. That's like
yeah, yeah,
my
yeah. Don't forget
that-
that.
yeah, that's what that's they get on my nerves sometimes, but those are my babies. So I got three. I got a daughter, she's 19. I got a 15-year-old son, soon to be 16, and then a 12-year-old son who I nicknamed Simba because he thinks everything the light touches is his. So yeah.
All right, that's interesting. So if you could please tell us a little bit about your naval career and then how you transitioned from retiring into your civilian life.
Oh man, so I joined the Navy in 1999 out of Miami. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, but I lived in Miami like the last almost 7 years before I joined the Navy. Um, Came originally wanted to be a Marine. To be honest with you, I was going to be a Marine, but they wouldn't guarantee my school. I cut a 93 on the ASVAB, and it was like, "Oh yeah, you'll probably get electronics." I'm like, "Yeah, deuces." So I would literally walk right next door, go over for 163rd Street Mall. I walked right next door to the Navy, and signed up. Went to boot camp in Chicago, Pensacola for A school, and from there I was pretty much everywhere. I was avionics technician over to Oceana. I went pre-com to Iwo Jima. All my Iwo people, if y'all seeing this, what's up? Um, Left there, went to the schoolhouse, and while I was on the Iwo, I was really fortunate. I had some chiefs and officers and first classes that really looked out for me and put me in positions way higher than my pay grade. Um, so I was able to pick up chief pretty quick. I actually made chief at 8 years and 5 months while I was at the schoolhouse. And that was a real turning point because, be honest with you, while my work merited me being chief, emotionally and mentally, I wasn't ready for it. So my first few years was kind of rough as a chief, but after I ended up doing 12 years as a chief. I actually spent more time in khakis than I did in blues, and left schoolhouse, ended up doing some squadron tours, more ships company tours, ended up getting about 8 deployments in 20 years. Um, and then I got to a point where I just knew, it was time. It was time for me to go. It was time to give back to my number one family. Like, I'm always gonna love my Navy family, but it was time for me to give back to my number one family. I was eligible for a master chief, but I said I'm done, and it's the best decision I could have ever made. Um, I have no regrets about it. Um, I get a chance to be at home, especially last year. Last year, if I hadn't retired in 19, um, April of 19, I'd have been on deployment in January of 2020, and then again on deployment right now. So when this pandemic hit, and I'm trying to adjust to being a father and having little ones who are in school, it'd have been rough. I'm glad I was here to be able to spend that quality time. The job I ended up getting, I work at Air Land, ComNav Air Land. I'm in charge of the calibration program over there, and they afforded me the opportunity to work from home. So I was really fortunate that I'm able to be here doing all that time. So
And that's a true blessing because I was talking to Courtney about this about how the pandemic has really changed the perspective of being a family, being family in general, and then a parent being at
mhm.
home with your kids. Because obviously the schools, a lot of these schools weren't allowed to be in there until just recently. So where does that leave the parents? You got to make adjustments, and it helped us prioritize what was important. And I agree, man. You did make a choice. Like, it was the perfect timing was perfect
Yeah,
because
really.
I felt bad for those guys on the Ike. Um, and I could only imagine if you about to retire and you got to go through that last 7 month deployment with no ports, you probably like, yo, I'm definitely done at this.
Listen, the Ike. If you on the Ike, if you've ever served on the Ike, you know what I'm about to say is true. The Ike gets it. We deployed 4 times in 5 years. 09, 10, 12, and 13. And the worst one was the 2013 deployment. We were supposed to leave February 21st, and the Truman pulled in to Norfolk and had their entire air wing still on board the ship in Norfolk. Every aircraft on board. They had all their stores, fuel, everything. 2 days before we were supposed to, and we were like, there's no way they're going to send this out. The Truman's ready to go. 2 days before we were supposed to deploy, they said, Truman, stand down. Ike, see you later. Our mouths hit the floor like, you can't be serious. We just got home in December. We just got home and you sending us back?
Truman made up for lost time too, though, because Truman been getting that working since Truman made up for lost time too, because we've been getting that work since
they getting it
2015.
now.
Yeah,
They getting it now. Man, we was like, I don't feel no sympathy. Everybody, we was like, man, I don't feel no sympathy for you, man. If you ain't been on Alcatraz, you don't know.
Alcatraz. That's good. I like that, boy.
Oh yeah, my people know what we're talking about. It's not that it's a bad ship. It's just you serve so much time there. You like, I can't get off of this boat, man. It's not that it's a bad. The crew, I would say, the camaraderie. I've been lucky to be on a couple ships where the camaraderie was like amazing. I remember being on the Kennedy for 9/11, and when I tell you the Kennedy was a floating dumpster fire, like that was held together with duct tape and prayer. But the camaraderie and the morale on that ship during that time was amazing. Being on the Ike, I mean, on the Ike, the Iwo Jima, we were in 03 when Iraqi Storm and what was it? Operation Iraqi Freedom kicked off. We ended up doing, and then we had to go to Liberia. We ended up doing, I think it was 107 days straight out there. And that was our maiden voyage. Like we ended up, I think total was like 200 something days, like for our maiden voyage. And again, the camaraderie, and mainly because a lot of us were plank owners, so we had been there since, this was a barge before it was even a ship. But the camaraderie there was amazing. And then, like I said, the Ike, even though we were doing back to back deployments, there was times we were low, but we ended up pulling through, and the camaraderie is actually really, really good there. I think I tell people I really learned how to be a chief during that time. You had no choice. It was either sink or swim. You had no choice.
Yeah, sink or swim.
Yeah,
definitely. So. Yeah, definitely. That's been the gist of my tour on Truman has been sink or swim. People, and this is our mentality. I think I would definitely like to take throughout the rest of my life. So there's been a few people that they'll check on board and they'll be like, I'm just trying to make sure I survive when I get here. And I'm like, it ain't about just trying to survive. You got to come here and conquer. Like, yeah. And so I think that's something to apply to life. When you have these goals, it ain't like, well, I'm just trying to get by. No, you got to go there, set your goal, and just run with it. Because if you try to tread water, just to kind of stay afloat, you're never really going to get anywhere, because you're going to have people just stepping over you, swimming past you like, oh, I'm passing you, bro. I'm out of here. You sitting there talking dog paddling. So that's one thing I've learned in my Truman has definitely taught me that, to definitely like put your foot on the gas, and then every opportunity, don't miss it. Definitely, don't miss any opportunities that come your way. And so with that, you had a great and challenging career, and great story too, which we'll go deep into later. So tell me a bit about the name of your book, and then how that kind of correlates with your life.
Okay, so name of the book is called Finn, A Story of Love and Hope. And the book actually started from a dream. Um, this was like early February, March. I started having a dream. I want to preface this, say this was before Ahmaud Arbery, before Breonna Taylor, before George Floyd. I had a dream that I was working in a convenience store. I've never worked in a convenience store before, but this was my dream. And I was getting off, it was late at night, I was getting off work, and I'm throwing the trash out. And while I'm throwing the trash out, someone comes and tries to rob the convenience store. The police show up, and while the robber's getting away, I inadvertently get shot, and I die. And when I first had the dream, I woke up in a cold sweat, like, what was that? But then I just kept having the dream over and over and over again. And finally, after about 3-4 weeks of this, I just woke up and wrote it. I just wrote out this scene, and I sent it to my publisher. And she was a friend. She wasn't my publisher at the time. I knew she had written a book. She was starting a publishing company. I sent it to her. I think it's Sasha Ridley over at Ray Legacy Publishing. And I sent it to her, and she immediately called me back like, hey, Where's the rest of this? So then it was the idea of, well, how did this kid get here? How did this person get here? And for years, a lot of friends have been telling me to write a book. I became, I say in 2016, especially right around the time Colin Kaepernick started kneeling, I became very political in not just about Democrats, Republicans, but about social issues going on. And I tell people I went to the school of Facebook right around the time 2016 when Colin Kaepernick started kneeling. I kind of got real political, but not so much about Democrat, Republican, but more so about social issues that were going on, because there were men and women that I served with that didn't quite understand what was going on, and they viewed the protest as something that was being overblown. It wasn't that bad. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, some of these kids, these young men, women getting shot, getting beat, that could easily be me. And I started writing a lot of posts, and people would tell me I should write a book. So when it came to Finn, I said, I can talk about these issues without overtly talking about the issues. There's enough of people writing their sob story. This happened to me when I was a kid, and this and forth. And it was enough of everybody beating those drums. And I'm like, I wanted to find a different way to bring people into the issue and have a sense of empathy. Because I thought that was what was lacking. It was empathy. People wanted to see it from their point of view and their point of view only, and not put themselves in the shoes of a young Black male, young Black female. So when I wrote that scene, I knew it was going to touch a lot of nerves, but a lot of the angst and things that go on in our neighborhoods are bigger than just drugs or violence. It's anger, it's frustration, it's depression, it's fear. And I wanted to address those issues in the book, but frame it in a way where it wasn't all about despair, but there was love and hope within those stories. So my idea was, if I can bring these people into the characters and make them see, almost put themselves in the character's shoes, and then they could see the situation differently, maybe I could reach some people. And I tell you, some of the most amazing comments I've gotten have actually been from white people who have called me, like some of them in tears, saying, I never saw it this way. I never viewed it like the way you framed it. Like, that could be me. That could have been me if I was born in that situation. That could have been me. So that's the premise of the book, and it was mainly to spark conversations. And there's other things I touch on. I touch on alcoholism. I touch on domestic violence. I touch on especially young Black men. I know for me, growing up, being able to tell another Black man, "Hey, bro, I love you," that was like taboo. We didn't say that. There was no. We didn't show affection like that. There was no vulnerability to do that. It's happening more now, and I applaud it. I'm so happy for it. But that is a relatively new phenomenon, and I will tell you this also. I will give Black women credit for this one, because the whole Black girl magic movement and how they I've seen the little memes, a queen, I'm gonna fix your crown, like stuff like that. I've seen that, and men have kind of followed that lead, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see. But those are the type of things I touch on in the book. So I allow these characters in the book to show their emotions, especially when it comes to males showing anger and weakness and fear, and then the ability to just cry and it not be, I know I don't say this to my son, but I've seen people say this to my son. They see a little boy crying, one of the first things they say is, "Stop acting like a girl." And that's crazy. He's not acting like a girl, he's acting like a human. Like, so if I'm a young male, if I'm a 4, 5, 6-year-old, and I feel frustration or anger to a point it moves me to tears, I have to, if I actually feel that way, I'm acting like a girl. So I repress that. I push that down. But now I don't have an outlet, nor do I have someone I could talk to and trust enough to allow myself to feel that, and that builds up over time, over years. So a lot of the characters, I make a point. Someone said to me, "Man, you always got them crying." I said, "But you know what? They should. Some of them should have. Some of the situation they should have. They should have been okay to cry." And there's one character in particular. His real name is Chris, but we call his nickname is bless you.
Thanks,
we call him
thanks.
Stacks. We call him Stacks in the book. Stacks is the son of a criminal, and his family, especially his father, is trying to force him into the family business. And he's like he's just super smart, and he doesn't want anything to do with it. But he has to play this role of being the son of the gangster, of being this guy. He doesn't want to do it, and so many things happen to him in his life that it's only at the end where he finally says, "I gotta let this go," and he's able to just cry, just get this out and have this moment. Um, and I've had a lot of people tell me, I have a good friend who's a school teacher, and he said, "I read your book, and Stack sits in my class." And he goes, I know this kid. I've seen him." He goes, "But I never saw him this way. But I knew something was going on with him. And it wasn't until I read this that I looked at him differently, like, this is what it is."
It gives
And
insight on these kids.
yeah, yeah, because they're really good kids. And we see them when they come into the Navy.
Yeah.
I've seen so many of these kids that it's sad. They come to the Navy, but they don't want to let go of that street mentality, and you have to kind of grab them and shake them, like, you didn't just go get a job somewhere or go to school. You came here because you knew the environment you were in and where you were wasn't conducive to your growth. Why are
Yep.
you not letting it go?
I got two guys that as soon as you brought that up, that reminded me of that. They come into the Navy thinking the world's already against them. And right, most of the leadership, especially khaki leadership, is Caucasian. So you coming into a world that you say it's a white man's world all over again. And so I've had to multiple times, even like, and this is how I know I care, because I'm yelling past taps in a berth and like, yo, you got this fresh start for a reason. Don't turn the world against you. You can use this as an opportunity to do better. But you got to figure out how to move. You going against the grain ain't gonna work for you. And you thinking that, oh, I don't want to have to listen to nobody. No matter where you go, you're gonna have to listen to somebody. Even a drug dealer listens to somebody. He's listening to the person that's providing him the drugs, or the person that is giving him his a little bit of a piece of the pie. So everybody's got somebody to listen to at the beginning. It's part of the totem pole. It's capitalism at its finest in America. So uh, it's just that for this, right? It's very structured, and yeah, can it be inconvenience and demoralizing at times? Of course, but it's part of breaking down the your pride and stuff like that. And
Right.
it does sadden me because Amir and I, we were originally from the Bronx as well, but I've spent half my life down here thanks to the Navy and us moving down here. So when we go up to New York, or when I go to any other place that's in the city, because I was stationed in Los Angeles before here too. So
Mhm.
LA is just a West Coast version of New York to me, as far as the how the demographics are set up. And one thing that's you could tell the thought process when they come in, it never left. They still carry that stuff over into the Navy. And now I have to, and boot camp doesn't change people like I guess then people think it's supposed to. It's just two
No.
months of you kind of playing the role, and then you go into the Navy, into the fleet, and then you picking up pretty much where you left off, almost to the sense where people are still selling drugs in the Navy, and they still on that gang stuff, right? So it's it's I'm big on trying to make somebody a better human being, or a better woman, a better man versus a better sailor, because I
Mhm.
think that transition is better, especially if they get out. If the Navy's just not for them, then that's fine. But they gotta. Here's the thing too, right? You can't want it more than them, because
Exactly.
I've run into that where I've gotten burnt out trying to, because I wanted more for them than they wanted for themselves, and maybe they just get in their own way. Uh, and look, you don't get everybody right,
Right.
and that's why I learned from one of my mentors. He called it, you have to focus on your sphere of influence. He's like, so think about it like this: if you're a supervisor of a section, focus on your section of people, if they listen to you and you can influence them positively, focus on them, and then their positivity and their work ethic that you and things that you train them on has instilled in them, they will spread it to the other guys that they have influence on. And then
So
the
I'll be
theory is that
proud.
it'll spread out.
Yeah.
So, because you may not be able to, you may be able to reach six sailors, but that seventh, eighth sailor you can't reach because they just not digging you. But maybe they dig one of the sailors, or maybe one of your peers that you have influenced, and then that goes into them. So he's like sphere of influence,
Exactly.
because it's just impossible to just reach out to everybody.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I started calling them. It's Bomani Jones used to say this all the time. Some of those kids, we call them can't go back all stars. Like, you can't go back. If you go back, what's there for you? Like, what are you doing? And sometimes it did take. I tell you, I have a story. He's retired now. Retired Master Chief Gerald Williams. So I was a young airman in A school. Now, mind you, I came in, I was 23 years old, but I still had that Brooklyn, I want to fight all the time mentality. And I got into a fight, and I'm standing outside the instructor office. And in A school down there, we had nothing but gunnery sergeants, mainly gunnery sergeants. We had a couple chiefs, some Air Force, but it was mainly Marines that ran our schoolhouse. So I'm standing outside there, and he was an AT-1. He walks by and he sees me. And I'm at parade rest. He goes, "Come to attention." And I come to attention. He goes, "What are you out here for?" And I told him. And he was like, "Stay right here." And he goes inside. Now, I don't know what he said when he went in that office, but he came out and he just said, "Come with me." And he took me over to another office and he kicked everybody else out. And before that door could close, I was up off my feet, up against the wall. And he grabbed me. He goes, "What the is wrong with you? Don't you know how smart you are? Don't you know?" Like, and he was trembling so hard I could see his eyes welling up. And he was from the Bronx. And it shook me because it was the first time someone, as crazy as it sounds, he talked my language. Like, I got it. That level of passion and fury that I saw in him, on as even though it came from a negative space, he knew how to reach me. And I'm not saying anybody's watching this go out here and jacket sailors up. That's what I'm saying. It's a whole different Navy
And
back
that's,
then.
I'm about to say, it's a different Navy.
Whole different Navy back then. But I never forgot that moment, and it was like something clicked in my head. Like, okay, I can do better. And not too long after that, my daughter came along, and I had a hunger, and it was for her, but it was still from a kind of sort of like a selfish place. It wasn't until I made chief, and a mentor tasked me. He goes, "You'll know when you're good at this when you make your first chief." And I was like, hmm, how do I bring someone up to this level? And once I was able to make someone to help them to get to that level of chief. It was more about, okay, how can I help people? What sailors can I help? What Marines? Because I've had Marines that work for me. I've had civilians that work for me. Um, and I started looking for the ones that didn't have a voice, because I remember going back to AT-1 Williams. Gerald, if you watching this, man, I love you, bro. I'll never forget that moment. But I go back to that moment when he went in that room and spoke for me. And he said what I couldn't, because if I would have walked in that room, it would have been the 23-year-old kid with the attitude, and he walked in there and said, "I get this kid, I know him." Basically, he's like, "I got him. Trust me, I'll take care of him." And he turned me around. So I became a collector. I tell people I would collect the kids, the sailors that nobody wanted, the sailors that was the problem children, the sailors that everybody wanted to kick out, give them to me. I got burned. There was times, I had one sailor, and it was a white sailor too. He had been to captain master, I don't know how many times. And I said, "No, I got him. I got him." And he went to mass. He was on the plane. He went to mass and we pull into Dubai, and he's on Class Charlie Liberty. So I check him off. I check him out. I take him out, let him go get some life out there in the little sandbox. Let him get some laundry, some internet, whatnot. We pull back out to sea, and this man called me a racial slur. And I'm like, yeah, I told this story. He was supposed to be one spot. I went to the gym because he was on night check. I went to the gym. I come back to the work center, check my email. I'm about to check to see if the wife's email me or anything. And I actually does, does AMO know where you at? And he goes, yeah. Well, that first class comes in, finds out, I find out he wasn't supposed to be where he wasn't where he was supposed to be. No one knew that he was in there. So I kick everyone else out. It's me and him in the first class, and I start going off, and I'm back in the first class. I would say, "You're gonna do exactly what anyone tells you to do." And he goes, "That's what I'm trying to do. You effing." And
Oh,
I tell
damn.
you, so you ever see those movies where like someone will be standing there, and then the monster just come and just yank them out, like
Yeah.
the tentacle wrap around, just suck them into another room. There was a third class, this young third class, and it goes kind of tied and bring it full circle. This young third class, huge guy, big, tall, black guy. He's at A1 now. He had his headphones on, and he was listening to a song, and it was in that brief 3 seconds in between song where there's a gap when the boy said it. And he was standing outside, and he heard it. And he opens the door, and he walks in. Now, I'm not the biggest guy. I'm about 5'8". This guy's about 6'3". He walks in and grabs me, picks me up, walks out, walks downstairs, sets me down, and he looks at me. He goes, "Chief, not you." And I'm like, "I'm gonna kill him." And he grabbed me, "Chief, not you." And he was crying. And I had to wake up. I was like, whoa. Like he knew I was about to end this kid. And he was like, "Not you. You can't do this." And he was like, "Please don't do this. Like, please." And I'm like, "I got you. You're right." So sometimes, and this kid White, when I first got there, he was the dirt bag. He had been, he had went to captain's master fighting, and he had the significant problems eval. But I said, "Give him to me. I want him. I want him." And we had just had our evals, and he was the number 2 EP. One eval later, he was the number 2 EP because I worked with him and I talked to him all the time. And for a moment there, he thought the one person that had his back, he was about to lose. And that's when I realized I can't take myself down that road because there are so many sailors. I may not reach them all, but I can reach some of them. And even if I could just get one of them to turn their life around, then it was worth it. So that was hard. I'm not gonna tell you it was hard not to put hands and talk to them in braille, let them feel what I'm saying. But it was hard. But I had to realize it's bigger than me. It's not for me. I'm in this position not to toot my own horn. I'm in this position to champion these young sailors and help them make the mission a success. Because I'm not the one out there turning the wrenches. I'm not the one there filling out the paperwork. I'm not the one there sitting in front of the computer taking everything to take care of. They are. And I need to be here for when they have the moment that I'm about to have, I was about to have. I need to be here for that. I need to be here to say, "Don't throw this sailor away. Don't, this sailor made a mistake, but this sailor is still good." Because I know coming up, I saw quite a few of my friends make that mistake and get sent home. And they didn't have that person in there saying, "Hey, I get them. This is a kid from my neighborhood." You can't say something like that to a kid from my neighborhood because they're gonna put hands on you. Like this is
Yeah.
like watch what you say, and but yeah, it was a rough moment. It was a rough moment, but it was definitely one that I in a crazy way I cherish because even though something bad happened to me, a moment later something great happened to me. And watching that kid get to that level of emotion let me know you're doing something right. And even though you couldn't fix this one, you did something right for this grown man to pick you up and carry you down a ladder well. Because we out to sea, carry me down a ladder well and beg me, "Don't do this." And I'm like, okay. So
I think, and so I've right after we talked a few days ago, I had a conversation where I was discussing about how throughout my time on board Truman, I've put a lot of time into people, and it's you have to find a balance between uh, putting your time and energy into them, but not so much that they suck you down with them.
mhm.
And so it's trying to find that fine line because you have your responsibilities at home, right? And we got our families, and so when I come home, it's hard to turn that switch off because you have these you got emotional attachments to these individuals. I think
Yeah.
especially when, more in particular to the military, right? We live with each other, but so that kind of, I think, amplifies, or we grow relationships a bit faster than normal. Maybe
Mhm.
what we did in a month, where it usually took people 6 months. But I think this applies to anybody when you're trying to be a leader, you're trying to mentor people, to have that fine line, because you'll find yourself like pouring so much into them because you want to make it right, you want to be able to fix it, because you see yourself in them. You see the
Right.
issues that you went through growing up, and you wish you had somebody at their age telling you, hey, don't do this. And a lot of times that they don't listen, because I know there's some times where I was being put on game to something at 19. I was just like, yeah, you old, you don't know
Yeah,
nothing,
exactly.
man. I got this. And then looking back, I'm like, yo, I wish I listened to that. My life would have been a whole lot different. Now, it's funny how some blessings come out of the mistakes that you make, right? Like, just like your situation. So you can't be like, I don't want to take it all back, because there was some life lessons that I learned I would have never maybe learned had I not gone through that situation. So
Right.
it ends up kind of working out.
Yeah. I learned early on, like I I don't I don't want to say I regret not listening to people. It's probably I wasn't ready to listen, and I had to get to that point when I got to that point. But where my life is now, while I might wish that it could have been a little easier or things happened a little differently, I'm grateful they happen exactly the way they are because I'm happy where I am now. And I can't undo that situation. I'm just grateful I had people that stuck in my corner that allowed me to fall and then said, okay, dummy, now come on over here, and let's talk, Um, but sometimes, going back to what you said, you put so much into another person. I think that was the balance that it took me a long time to to understand, because you give so much of yourself to these sailors, but you're not feeding your own soul, you're not feeding your own spirit to replenish
Yes.
that, you know
Yes.
and I've told people, when I make cat, they said, what's the biggest thing about being a chief? Some of my junior sailors, they'll ask, that's your chief, what's the biggest thing? And they think, oh, the food's better, the ration's better. So that's all fringe benefits. What's the biggest thing about being, for me, was I got the whole story. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, there was an incident that nobody quite understood why the decision was made. We get that extra little piece, and that piece sometimes is so gut wrenching or devastating or heavy, like, and you can't share it with anybody. And sometimes we hear and see things when you make chief people. I've had sailors come up to me and just tell me they were sexually assaulted, male, female. I've had sailors walk up and tell me they're ready to kill herself. I had one sailor tell me he's been, for like 6 7 months, he's been addicted to heroin, and he's just never came up on a piss test. And I'm
Yeah.
like, wait, what? Wait, what? And it's not something you want to take home and share with the wife and kids. How was your day at school? Yeah, how'd you do today? Oh, well, I had a girl slit her wrist. That's not something you share. So
At the
you
dinner
hold
table.
that. Yeah, you hold that, and you're trying to be there. I've had sailors get the phone call that their mom or dad is going to pass, and they got like 6 hours. They give them 6 hours, and we're like out to sea, like. And that sailor, I've had sailors lose a child. Like, how do you comfort that sailor, and then the next sailor, and then the next sailor, and then the next sailor, and not expect to carry some of that with you? And they don't give us training like they should. They don't prep us on how to deal with that stuff. They give us a PowerPoint,
Yeah,
maybe send us to
yeah,
a class,
yeah.
you know, but they really don't tell you how us as leaders are supposed to process that. That's what therapists and psychologists, I forget the exact term for it, but it's basically when you carry that other person's pain, they worry about that. That's something that they go through intense training, and a lot of those therapists are in therapy because of it. Yet we're supposed to go out here and deal with all this stuff and then go out here and launch aircraft, or go out here and stand to watch and do this while we're away from our family for 7 months, then come home and act like nothing happened and just assimilate back into family life. That's the hardest part. And I said, you know what? That's why we get those bigger racks and the better food, because sometimes I walk into the mess and just put my head down like this, like, oh my God, I can't believe, I don't even know what we did in the shop today. I don't even know if anything worked today because I was dealing with all this other stuff, so
One thing I've learned, two things you just mentioned actually. So since I've been a chief, one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of times it's a thankless job, and the junior sailors they do not know the full story. So what they've heard, or what the rumor may be, you may end up looking like the villain, or looking like you didn't fight for them like you could have. But little do they know what you just went through to fight for them despite their shortcomings, because they a lot of times they don't acknowledge it. They don't acknowledge their shortcomings. Very rarely do I have a sailor that will admit what they did and then go to fix it.
Right.
So it is what it is. But it's fine, because if you're in it for the accolades of people praising you, then you're in the wrong business.
Yeah.
And
but
when it comes to,
go ahead.
And then when it comes to the family, not to say, like, obviously if you try to pour into your family, or let's say your spouse, or what you got going on, he or she's going to care because it affects you. But I was talking to my Divo the other day, and I was like, at the end of the day, my significant other, does she really care about this other sailor? No, she cares about my well-being. You know what I'm saying? And so if I'm jeopardizing my well-being because of how much I care about this particular sailor, her initial reaction is, well, you need to make some decisions because it is affecting your household now. Right. And so that's like I said, a balance that you have to kind of figure out. And you're right, the outlet, it may be a little filtered, right? Because like you said, it's not something to have at the dinner table. It's not to talk about. And right. Then in the bed, you know what I'm saying? That's your time to detox and just relax, not talk about how somebody just tried to kill himself. All right, baby, good night. Like
but yeah, I mean, and I tell you, like I said, I learned it late in life, and it cost me, because things just like these sailors came into the military with issues. I came into the military with issues, and I did make chief so fast, and there was so much pressure on me, and I didn't know how to handle it. And I, even as a chief, still didn't trust people enough to tell them what I was going through, that that this was eating at me. And
that's what you just reminded me about.
Yeah,
it didn't stop. It didn't stop after you went through season. You were supposed to still be learning. And so
right.
I think that's a misconception a lot of people have. And so those situations you was talking about, how you weren't trained for it through NDOC, Chief CPO NDOC, right? There was another khaki that probably went through what you went through. And that's where you were supposed to still be talking to the mess, figuring out, okay, what did you go through, bro? Because I got this situation I ain't never heard of in my life. Especially being on a carrier, there's some situations where I was just like, what is this? Like, never knew this was possible. So for people that think that they made it in life, like, oh, I made it, because put on khakis, right? That's like, oh, we made it. But you right. didn't make it. There's still stuff to learn. There's still situations you have never experienced, and it doesn't stop there. And that's in anything in life. Continue to keep the door open that you can learn, no matter how much you feel like you've mastered a particular thing.
Right. Yeah. And I tell you, unfortunately, so when I made chief, I was at the schoolhouse. I was over at Dam Neck, and I was kind of on an island by myself. I had a few sailors that worked underneath me, but I didn't really have another chief that I interacted with. When I first made it, I ended up getting there and there was a senior chief I interacted with, but I didn't trust the process. I thought it was going to come up, and it's just me, my arrogance, refusing to be humble. I felt that I couldn't come and tell somebody that this was taking a toll on me, because I thought I'd be looked at as a failure. And my recourse is what a lot of sailors do, is I started drinking. And I was always I drank before, but I really started drinking really heavily. until in 2016, I had to check myself in a rehab. I didn't get in trouble, didn't get arrested, nothing like that. But I went on a bender on a weekend, and by that Monday, I was like, enough. I can't do this anymore. And I checked myself in, and tell you the support I got from the chiefs, from my chain of command. They didn't look at me as a failure. They kept telling me, "We're proud of you," and I'm like, "How are you proud of me?" I crumbled. I couldn't take it anymore, and they were like, "No, because you did it the right way. You asked for help." Um, and then it took. I tell you, my greatest failure, and I say that was a failure because I let it get to that point. Also became one of my greatest triumphs because it allowed me, once I cleared my head, to see things from a different point of view and look at sailors not just on the superficial of what can I do to make you a better sailor, but really look at them and say something's not right. Like, I know there's something going on with this sailor way deeper than what they're letting on. And a lot of times, because after a while, right after I got rehab, I was able to. My chain of command allowed me to get up at safety stand down, and I was able to share my story with my entire command. But because I was vulnerable like that, and I'm saying that everyone has to do this, but because I was vulnerable like that, and I allowed them in, and they knew, well, wow, if Chief Williams could suffer through this, anybody can. Then they were able, they trusted me more. They opened up to me more. And I think a lot of times us as leaders don't want to show that we're human, we have flaws, that we're dealing with things. And me letting them know, and sometimes I just say, look, I'm scared about things too, or I feel this too, or, you're going through something in your marriage. Let me tell you some problems we went through. Being able to talk to those sales on that level really opened things up for me, and opened things up for them. And it allowed, going back to what you said earlier on, they became like my little prophets. So I would have sailors that I worked with bring me a sailor I'd never met before, and they would say, talk to chief. Or then I may senior, talk to senior can help. And I'm like, what's the problem, senior? This is it, da 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 da. Okay, what's going on? Who's your chief? Let's go talk to him. And I became almost like that third party. Hey bro, hey sis, one of your sailors came to me about this. Don't get mad at them, but just listen. This is what they're scared to tell you. This is what they haven't told you. I don't want you to take this as, well, why are they telling you? Don't. It's not about that. It's not about territory. It's not about this. It's about helping this sailor.
Yeah.
It's about making sure this sailor gets the support that they need. Whether they told me or not, they told somebody. If one of my sailors came and told you something and you told me, I would say thank you. Don't get mad about this. And that really let me know, okay, what you're going through. I said earlier, I don't really have regrets. What you're going through had a purpose. Sometimes I'm going through something, and I'm on a path, and it may not even be really my path, but I have to go through this because it's someone else I'm supposed to help later on. I'm supposed to reach out and grab somebody later on. I don't know who it is, but when I find them, oh, you're the one I'm supposed to. I know what I need to talk to you about, or better yet, because I've had a conversation with somebody else and that they went through something similar, because we had that open dialogue. I'm able to go up to him and say, you know what, I may not be able to talk to you, but I got the perfect person that you can talk to. Come here, let me put you with this person, and and be able to have those types of, and I think if more leadership in the Navy, and not just in the Navy, but in life period. When I say leadership, us as parents, we're leading our children into life, you know, as brothers, older brothers or sisters, or husband and wife. Sometimes, the wife has to take the lead and show, baby, let me tell you this, or the husband takes the lead, sweetie, let me show you something. If we allow ourselves to have those vulnerable moments where we can talk not just about the good stuff, but about the bad stuff, about the pitfalls, and we can trust in that. I've seen so much growth in people's relationships, and in people, period, from those types of moments, which is kind of what I tried to put back into the book. Like, let me show you what happens when people have that level of openness and that level of dialogue and trust amongst each other, even when it's someone you would never think is going through something like this. So,
And speaking of the book, I'm gonna make sure that I put the a link to the book, because you said it's on Amazon. put
Yeah,
the
it's on Amazon, Amazon Kindle, Barnes and Noble, Ingram Spark. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll make sure I put the link to the book inside the description on YouTube and on the podcast so people could check that book out. I know you said you get some great reviews. It's all you're the first person I've been able to talk to where like your book is being accepted into Barnes and Nobles. So definitely offline,
Yeah.
I'll be picking your brain on that process. Because I was telling you how me and my father think about writing a book. Well, he's writing on his. I just been putting my little pieces here and there, but he's actually working on his with the whole world building I was talking to him about earlier. So that's pretty dope. Oh man. So putting this all together, what would you consider your rich state of mind? What is your big why as to why you have so much passion in things that you do?
Um, I tell I tell people a lot that it was done for me. Someone paid it forward with me, and it's my job to pay it forward now. And we only get one shot at this little thing called life. And we have this too much time we waste waiting for something to happen, and we never put action in on ourselves. So if you're having a problem with your marriage, put that action in to fix it. Be humble enough to know that there's a problem, and you very well may be the cause of or the source of said problem. But what do we do to fix it? If you're having problems if you're in the military, you're having problems with one of your subordinates or one of your peers or one of your superiors, figure out what you can do to fix it. What can we do to make this better? If it's something that's just personally within you, don't be scared. Figure it out. Take that chance and try to make it better. But you got to be honest with yourself, and you have to be willing to be open and vulnerable. And it's tough, especially as men. We don't like hearing that word vulnerable. We don't like hearing that word emotion. But deep down inside, when no one else knows, we all we like to call it insecurities or our things we worry about. But we know deep down inside what it is, and find that person that you can talk to. Find that outlet that you need to not only heal whatever it is, strengthen whatever it is, but feed yourself, feed your soul, feed your spirit, and in turn, you'll feed your family. It'll go through everything that you do. Um, and that's kind of how I operate. It's taken a long time. I'll be 45 in a couple days, and it's taken a long time to get here. And sometimes I wish I could just go back to young me and say, "Come here, it's gonna be okay." But let me talk to you. I wish I
Yeah.
could go back and talk to him, but I love that person. I don't hate that person. I love that person I used to be because he became me, and I'm really just excited to see where I'm gonna go from here. And I'm just trying to relay all of that to my children, and hopefully they don't make the mistakes that I made.
And you're enjoying your second term in life of a retirement.
oh, oh yeah, loving every second of it. Loving every second. Yeah. When next time you pull out, I'll be thinking about you, bro.
Well, I appreciate your time, Gamal. This has been great. I think we gave some great insight when it came to leadership. Definitely, right. Our reference is the military, but I think that when it comes to influencing, mentoring, and leading individuals, this can be used across the board, and to make sure that emotionally we are taking care of ourselves as well throughout that journey, and how we have to kind of sometimes we can't forget where we came from, right? And our background and how we were that person 20, 15, 10 years ago. And how can we
Right.
bring that person up, try to save that individual? So again, Gamal, thank you so much. Thanks for giving me your insight and your story. I really appreciate it, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, brother.